Good evening. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast live stream. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi. And tonight I am very honored to welcome back this guest back to our program. He is the man that gave me and my co host, Ken Fang from Awful Announcing, an opportunity to do a sports talk show back in 2021 when, we were still very much in the pandemic phase around the world. And this man was kind enough to give us a hand and also help produce our show back in the day. And, we've left his network, the Barroom Network based out of Chicago, around 2022, just before the NFL season began. But we are still tight. We still talk every now and then, and I'm very pleased to welcome the founder, the mentor of our show, as well as the owner and the co-host of his Chicago-based YouTube channel, the Barroom Network. It is none other than Mr. Aldo Gandia himself. Aldo, good evening, and thanks for joining us once again.
My pleasure. And the greatest memory I had of our time together at the Barroom Network when you had the Double A show there was the fact that you were spreading the message about people being aware of how the Asian community was being treated because of misinformation about the virus and so forth. And there was a surge in Asian hate crimes. And not only did you and Ken talk smartly about sports, but you also let people know, the reality of the situation, and brought a lot of awareness. So I really appreciated having a small role in that.
No, thank you. And, it was getting really out of control back then. And, we had to do something about it. And, Ben Koo, who actually is the current owner and also the main editor of the Awful Announcing, I reached out to him, and he was actually kind enough to introduce me to Ken, and here we are today. So, it's hard to believe that we're still going strong for 3 years now, and if it wasn't for you, I don't think we would have never ever gotten this far with our own show. So I still owe you a lot of gratitude, and thank you for giving us the ropes and support to where we are tonight. And all right, Aldo, let's get to the obvious subject of our conversation tonight: the Chicago Bears. And we had a lot of high hopes entering this season, and at one point, we were 4-2 following the demolition of the Jacksonville Jaguars in London. And, we had a bye week from there. And just from that point on, everything just kind of completely regressed badly. The Hail Mary loss to the Washington Commanders kind of set off a chain of unfortunate a series of losses, and just the lack of leadership, accountability, etc., etc. Did you ever foresaw this coming, or were you as surprised as all of us are with just how bad the season disintegrated?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as a fan, you put a lot of hope into the season. You saw a lot of changes, and you get the best player in the entire draft, and it happens to be a quarterback, and then you get the ninth best player in the draft, and it's a wide receiver, and you expect that the head coaching is going to get better because of more experience and so forth. So I was a bit surprised at the utter self-destruction by Matt Eberflus. He did not handle certain situations well, and we can point the finger to Ryan Poles in terms of roster building, but we were all hopeful that the mediocre offensive line that he built was going to be enough for Caleb Williams. Well, the reality is that it wasn't the best for any rookie quarterback, and despite the fact that Williams has great escapability, Poles is still liable for the fact that he put together a poor offensive line. And yes, there have been a lot of injuries, but I think the biggest surprise, and I was never a big proponent of Matt Eberflus, but I didn't expect his choking, his mistakes to have such an impact, and it quickly spread like a virus. Speaking of viruses, and it impacted the attitude of players, and there was a lot of locker room controversy and so forth. So yeah, I am a bit surprised, Stephen.
Yeah, the promising season just completely went out of the window rather quickly from that Hail Mary losses. And I've been a regular caller on 670 The Score and ESPN Chicago's post-game show. Whenever the Bears lost, even looking back at last year, they blew 4 leads in the fourth quarter to lose those games. And the one of the biggest issue that I've always had with Matt Eberflus is that the lack of accountability was coming from him. It's always about we. It's not about him. And I think after that the disaster that was the Washington game, we always look back at that the play before the Hail Mary, the 10-12 yarder out route that gained them an extra 13 yards, putting them closer to the end zone, in which he casually dismissed as that play didn't matter. And for me, I think you worked in the corporate world as I do right now, and I think a lot of people do these days. The lack of accountability coming from the leaders, it kind of it permeates, and it just makes you wonder, like, what are you talking about? Why can't you at least own your end of the bargain? And Matt Eberflus, he never really did that. I know he worked on the communication aspect of it. He grew a beard, he changed his clothes and everything, but obviously that didn't go far enough, or at least it didn't do much, because he was still the same old Matt Eberflus. And how will you remember Matt Eberflus as the head coach, and what is his legacy?
Well, good question. I will remember him as another in a growing line of head coach mistakes by the Bears front office. I really think that he was not the best candidate for the job. I think that the Ryan Poles, when he was chosen, he should have said, I'd like to look outside of the 3 candidates that you're recommending. So I'd like to have another week or so. But the reality is that he elected to go with Matt Eberflus 2 days after he was hired. And that to me seems a little hasty. I will remember Matt Eberflus as a guy who made terrible decisions in his own hiring. Luke Getsy, Shane Waldron on the offensive coordinator side, and Allen Williams, who left under mysterious circumstances. So he has a huge amount of accountability for his hiring practices. And I'll remember Matt Eberflus for also being a guy who was a terrible game manager late in games, and then when he met with the press conference, with the media in press conferences, failed to take a leadership role himself, and and immediately say, this was on me and this is what we're going to do to help correct that. Now, he started doing that after players were upset that he didn't take any accountability for the 13-yard play in Washington that you itemed just a minute ago. And so that cost the players their devotion to him. They, by all accounts, they liked playing for the guy. But the fact that they were losing, and it was clearly because the head coach was making mistakes late in the game, they started to get fed up with that. And they've done a lot of losing in Chicago Bears football. They've done a lot of losing recently, and he wasn't able to withstand the pressure of that losing. And therefore, he tried to deflect blame, which to me is ridiculous. You got a 5-year contract. Reports tell us that he signed for a 5-year contract. And I'm sure Ryan Poles told him, listen, this is what we're going to do. You're going to have to play young guys because we're going to tear this thing all down. And typically you're going to lose more than win when you take that approach. So that first year was a gimme for him. And then in his third year, there's dramatic change with the quarterback position. If he would have handled the losing in a smarter manner, he might still be the coach, or at the very least, finish the season and perhaps then fired in the offseason.
Absolutely. We got to talk about the man suddenly finds himself in a spotlight now. That is the general manager, Ryan Poles. Obviously, his job security is now starting to come into question now because of all of it. We're talking a lot about his role in hiring Matt Eberflus from the list that was compiled by the none other than Bill Poley and his research team that was utilized by then President Ted Phillips, as well as owner George McCaskey, and then the job of just picking the candidate out of it and doubling down after last year, when reports are now surfacing that they wanted to fire him. And it made a lot of sense for many people to move on. So it just it was a bad look now, and now he finds himself all alone having to answer these questions. And the day after Eberflus was fired, which was obviously a very, very clumsy one, unfortunately, which was another PR nightmare for the Bears that they didn't have to do in the first place. They could have just at least postponed it, or at least made that decision overnight, so that they wouldn't have to, make Matt Eberflus sit in front of a camera, even if it's only for about 15, 20 minutes. It just kind of made him a sympathetic figure. Only the Bears can make a guy like Matt Eberflus that sympathetic. But so my question now is, it's a hot button topic. Do you think he's still safe, or do you feel like the negatives are starting to kind of add up right now overshadowing the positives, which nowadays it seems as though people only think that the only good thing he's ever done was that trade with the Carolina, which got them the number one overall pick in April of this year, that we got Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is obviously the first and foremost, the number one asset that any coach would love to coach for. But where are you on Ryan Poles and his, if he's safe or not?
Well, I think his job is very much in jeopardy, and let's start. Anyone who is leading an organization has to look at somebody's entire line of work since they joined the organization when they're giving thought to releasing somebody. And with Ryan Poles, he came in with no first round draft pick. He came in with a tough salary cap situation. So he had a plan, and I agreed with the plan, which was to gut the roster, get rid of high paying veterans who weren't a good, solid return on investment, and start from scratch. And he vowed to start with the draft. Well, in his first draft, one of the things he said, we would draft fast, young players. And Velus Jones was a third-round draft pick, a 25-year-old wide receiver, and certainly he filled the bill of being fast. But he wasn't young, and he wasn't any good, as we learned. So that was a wasted draft pick. And if you look back, hindsight is over 2020, right, correct. But if he would have built from the offensive line, instead of taking the two defensive backs in round 2 when he had his first 2 picks, there were quality defensive and offensive line immediately available after the Kyler Gordon. There was Boya Faye, I believe his name is, the pass rusher, and then 2 or 3 picks after Jaquan Brisker was the center who is now playing at a very high level for the Eagles, Cameron Jurgens. So those are misses. If you value the fact that the game is won at the line of scrimmage, those were misses. And so, we could play this game. So, and of course it's hindsight, but we had people in the Barroom Network, and I was defending Ryan Post. I kept saying he's going by the best player available. If there isn't a better offensive lineman, well, the problem is that there were better offensive and defensive linemen, at least in terms, if you look at it by valuing the position, there were better players available. And so, I was wrong back then when I defended him, and guys like Danny Shimon were correct, saying that he should be building this team from the inside out, not the outside in. So that puts him in jeopardy. Secondly, you're also in big trouble in your second year when you start making trades and trading away draft capital. That actually was his first year when he made the trade for Chase Claypool. He traded away a second-round pick, and it wasn't even the Bears pick. It was the Bears pick that, excuse me. It was, yes, the Bears pick that he traded instead of the Ravens second round pick, which would have been 28, 29, 30. So they traded the higher of the 2 second round picks for a receiver that the Pittsburgh Steelers had given up for. So it's just some silly mistakes. Now, has he made some good moves? Yes, he had. But I tend to think that the trade with the Carolina Panthers was less master negotiations and a little bit more luck. Now, you create your own luck. The old business saying, the old theorem is that, luck comes for those who are properly prepared. So he, of course, deserves credit. But there was no way that we knew that it was going to be the number one overall draft pick and so forth. So his successes are, some of them you raise an eyebrow to, and unfortunately, there's far too many successes now in his third year. He owns the same record as Matt Eberflus, actually one loss worse. So I think his job is in the hot seat. If I'd like to add real quickly, Kevin Warren, the president and CEO, at that press conference, it was pretty obvious that he was stepping forward and saying, I'm in control here. And we all know that the general manager in his contract has hiring and firing decisions on the head coaches. But Warren was basically saying, I'm going to have a really big voice in this, and that's a bad thing. You should let your football people make football decisions. And Mr. Warren, who is a very successful lawyer, agent, and worked at organizations and helping them build their infrastructure, literally and figuratively, should stick to that, his expertise, and allow the GM, whether it's Ryan Poles or a new one, allow them to make the football decisions.
So here's my counter argument with that, with the Kevin Warren argument. We found out that the length of Matt Eberflus's contract, along with Ryan Pace's timeline, did not match. Eberflus had 5 years. Poles had 4 years for whatever reasons. Again, it's like another classic dumb move made by George McCaskey for not lining it up together. And that's one of the biggest problems under George McCaskey's leadership, is that GM, quarterback, and the head coach, they were never, ever on the same timeline at all. So, based on your conversations, obviously, and from my personal perspective, no matter what happens, I'm okay with it as long as the timeline matches it this time. That's all that matters right now. And if Ryan Poles gets another second shot at hiring a head coach, just like Ryan Pace did, as did Jerry Angelo, so be it. I think the most important thing is you finally have a chance to align everything together. And I know the reports came out that, Ryan Poles isn't happy with the arrangement that he has to report to Kevin Warren. But based on the job that he has done when it comes to assembling an offensive line, et cetera, I mean, who are you to, complain or nag about the arrangement. With Ted Phillips retiring and Kevin Warren hired, he's the new boss now. So you're going to have to deal with the changes. And your job recently certainly hasn't inspired a lot of confidence, not just among Kevin Warren, but even us fans in general. So personally, even you extend polls or fire him, either move, it would not be well received by the fans, no matter what. Whether you want to keep polls in favor of giving him another chance because Ryan Pace got another shot, then Ryan Poles deserves another. Or if you're like, maybe Poles is embarrassed and maybe he wants to leave and resign and just go somewhere else where he can be on his own or something. And that's a valid argument. But at least from me, I would rather have somebody lead than let George continue to screw this over and over again, because we've seen this act before and it's not working. So for those who are probably misunderstanding the role of Kevin Warren, first and foremost, he's not going to overrule Ryan Poles when it comes to draft picks. Warren is not the one who's going to say, okay, we're taking this player A over player B that you're recommending. I don't think that's something that fans need to understand, that Warren is not going to be calling the shots inside the draft room. That's a biggest misunderstanding that I think a lot of people who are fed up or who are angry with Warren for some reason, because I've seen, unfortunately, maybe you have as well, although that you've probably seen some casual racism being thrown around, describing the current structure of the Chicago Bears with so many, qualified African American executives, including Warren, Poles, and now interim head coach Thomas Brown, all African Americans, all aligned together as maybe some sort of a motivation to attack, Warren. So, I think that needs to be rectified, or make sure that that's not being the motivational factor for fans who are upset with Kevin Warren sort of running the show right now over Ryan Poles. So at least for me, Warren has done a lot of work with both Detroit and Minnesota, which is the NFC North rivals, and you mentioned, about his role in securing that new stadium up in Minnesota, which is a wonderful stadium, and the Bears are going to be playing there this upcoming Monday. So I am willing to give at least Kevin Warren a shot. He wants to change the structure of the organization, and he and Poles at least were able to convince George McCaskey to finally move on from Matt Eberflus, because keeping him certainly wasn't going to do anyone any favors. It was just such a collateral damage that was just too much to ignore, with the players going on CHGO or 670 The Score to voice their complaint. It was a massive mutiny about to happen. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I'm willing to give Warren a shot. And if Warren has the next 4 weeks to determine to extend either Ryan Poles or find us somebody else. And, I think no matter what happens, I think the fans themselves have to kind of embrace that, change for better or for worse, in my opinion.
Well, I disagree with you here on a few points. Let's get back to the situation with Mark Silverman of ESPN 1000 was the one that broke the rumor that Ryan Poles was unhappy. Now, it is a rumor because it hasn't been confirmed by anyone else. And right. Mark said that he got it from a very reliable source, and I don't doubt that he did. But you in journalism you need two sources, and you would also like to see, as a consumer of news and sports news, I'd like to see another publication or another sports media organization confirm that, and that hasn't happened. But let's say right. that let's say that he is unhappy. I can understand. Now, he does have to get over it. I totally agree with you on that. He's got to get over it. He's got to get back to work. But I can understand anyone who is hired to do a job and is told that he's going to report directly to the chairman, and now another party has joined the picture, and you were told that that person was going to be focused solely on the building of the stadium, and now when things are going bad, you've got that person who you weren't reporting to, and now you're reporting to, and he's coming in a press conference, and he begins the press conference instead of the general manager who is responsible for hirings and firings, and he starts the press conference by saying, I want to tell you that I am still energized at being the leader of this organization. I always knew there would be days like that. That to me doesn't instill confidence. That to me is a clue that this gentleman might be trying to steal the attention. I saw a couple of interviews with NFL scouts who said other general manager candidates probably saw that and say, that's not going to be a good place to work. This guy is sending out vibes that he is too into himself, or he's power hungry. And I'm worried about that. So if you're right, that Kevin Warren is going to run the show, meaning football operations, decisions at a very high level. He's not going to be in the draft room. He's not going to be looking at tape or anything like that, but high decisions and perhaps impact the GM's decision one way or another, then we got a problem. And if he's going to voice differing opinions on the selection of a coaching staff and other things that might impact football operations, then I'm worried. I'm frankly worried at where this organization can go. I'm not. And I was a big fan of Kevin Warren when he was hired. I saw his HBO feature by Bryant Gumbel, and they detailed how he suffered a really serious injury or had health concerns where he couldn't walk. His father built a swimming pool in the backyard so that he could start to swim and regain feeling in his legs. And the young man was dedicated. He ended up playing on the high school basketball team when doctors were afraid he'd never work. He went to law school, got multiple degrees. He's got a resume that is, wow. The only blemish may be how he handled the COVID crisis, but that's more hindsight, than anything. He was being advised by healthcare professionals that maybe it's a good thing we don't play. And so that's what he did. So I was excited when he entered the Chicago Bears picture, but now as I get to see him more, he seems to be craving attention, and that concerns me.
Mm-hmm. I get your point there, Aldo. And, I think one of the reasons to be perceived as somebody who wants to do that is because piss poor job, for the lack of better terms, that Poles has done. The tape surfaced about him talking about how proud of he was involved in the hiring process of Shane Waldron. When it indeed fact that Eberflus, Poles, and Waldron are all represented, ironically, by the former Bear Trace Armstrong, who was the former president of NFLPA Players Association, and also has represented many coaches and front office executives in the past. So I think as long as Warren can make sure that he's not sidestepping, and more importantly, not relying on Bill Polians of the world, or even, God forbid, Trace Armstrong, just because he's a former Bear, I'm okay with that. And I don't think that having a voice as experienced like Warren is, maybe at least he's not looking down on Poles by any stretch of the imagination. And I think as a longtime executive and an African American, I think he wants Poles definitely to succeed because of the lack of minorities an advancement in the NFL front office side, even with the implementation of the Rooney Rule. But I do hope that polls take this as an opportunity to learn, and he doesn't have time to pout. I understand that press conference made him look bad, but I think it's coming probably more from him being not necessarily embarrassed, but basically he was a little bit embarrassed that the guy that he vouched for, stood for, just completely destroyed the moral fabric of the entire season that was so promising, and yet he completely botched it, and now Poles is the one that has to kind of step in the limelight because you no longer have Shane Waldron, you no longer have Matt Eberflus to blame on. You're the guy now who is in the spotlight now, so you're going to have to learn to deal with it. You're going to have to learn to grow up fast. There's going to be a lot of people, out with the pitchforks and, taking shots at you. You're going to have to learn the hard way now. This is, you're in the big leagues now. You had 3 years, and the offensive line still looks like a total garbage. The defense isn't, attacking the quarterbacks like they should be, and the players are just basically speaking out and voicing their displeasure. You are the one who put this team together. It's no longer Ryan Pace's team. It's your team now, your players. And they went so much to, speak highly of Thomas Brown in his first game, and they look absolutely, disinterested and just basically, never really got off the plane, as people would say, and then lose 38-13 in an absolute stinker, which kind of raises questions about the talent level and the people, the players, and how you put them together right now. Mm-hmm. So I hope that Poles will take this opportunity to grow up and, not get too caught up in the, the emotional aspect of it, because the job still needs to get done. He doesn't have time to, cry over who to report and all that kind of stuff. He has to kind of learn to, get along with Kevin Warren, and maybe he can learn to maybe tame him a little bit too, if he was kind of overstepping in that sense as well moving forward. So we're very, very curious to see how the dynamics will change between now and the end of the season. My guest tonight is my longtime friend and a person who helped us launch our show a long time ago from Chicago, the Barroom Network on YouTube channel, the co-host and the founder, Aldo Gandia, based out of Chicago tonight. So obviously now the attention focuses on the head coaching candidates, and the term "man among leader" or "man among men" or that kind of stuff is just kind of being casually tossed around and just kind of walking on its own. I think first and foremost, I think whoever takes over this job, whether it's the first-time coach or somebody who's done it before, if you're looking at maybe a first-time head coach and then people have reservations about it, we all have to, every coach, college and the pro, they always start somewhere, okay? And then there are plenty of, first-time coaches who have succeeded. It's up to the, every organization to make sure that you have the right infrastructure and support system to make it work. And the Bears haven't done that, unfortunately. So, we have to make sure that, we cannot ignore just because you're a first-time head coach that we should automatically rule, because we've done it so many times with, Matt Nagy, Matt Eberflus, and, got absolutely no results out of it. I think it's just a dangerous precedent that we're trying to set. Just because you're a first-time head coach, we should automatically rule him out. Where do you stand on the coaching candidates and the experience versus the first-time coach experience?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because everyone wants to find their LA Rams coach. I'm forgetting it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean McVay. Everybody wants to find the young genius, the young guy that can do it all, from designing explosive offensive plays to leading a room of men. And so that would be my preference. It would be taking a huge chance, though, at an unproven coach. And my concern now, it wasn't a concern 2 months ago, but it is now, is that you've lost a locker room. There are veteran players like Cole Kmet said yesterday or Monday in his press conference. It's getting frustrating. I've been here a while. I've started to ask other players who've been here longer than me, how do you deal with all of this losing? And so you're losing guys like Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson and other of your other top Bears players, and you could even see it in their play. They're saying it in words and they're saying it in play. And so perhaps you need a strong coach like a Vrabel. I see Nicholas posted earlier. I don't understand fans want to settle with Vrabel instead of taking a big swing for Ben Johnson. I totally get that. I totally understand why Ben Johnson is appealing, but there is no proof at all that Ben Johnson can command a room of defensive and offensive players, the entire room. And also Ben Johnson's success. He's got the best offensive line in football. He has got one of the best pass catching tight ends in football. He has got a 1-2 punch in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs that is comparable to Zonka and Mercury Morris. He has got Amon St. Brown. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done an outstanding job of giving Ben Johnson all of the weapons he needs and the offensive line to protect those weapons. Ben Johnson deserves credit for Jared Goff, but Jared Goff was never a bad quarterback, and Ben Johnson just brought out or corrected some things, because let's remember, Goff was played in a Super Bowl. So, it's a tough call. So you ask me, how do I feel about that? I don't know. I frankly don't know how to feel on that right now.
Yeah, I think the both arguments are valid. The experienced coaches out there are primarily, the defensive coordinators, and we've already gone through that road before with John Fox and the defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, obviously, who probably had more flaws than anybody else that I've seen before, because of the lack of accountability part. The argument, of course, against hiring a Mike Vrabel is that OC hiring, whoever they hire and immediately have success, that coach immediately becomes a hot head coaching candidate, and he will be gone as soon as the next year. The other counter argument, of course, is that Mike Vrabel has also hired Matt LaFleur, who is now the Packers head coach, and also Arthur Smith, who had a very good success track record and went on to the Falcons head coaching job before he was unceremoniously got canned last year as well. So I think it's predicated on who and how people like Mike Vrabel, can assemble a competent a coaching staff. Do you kind of worried about maybe the argument is that with OC head coach, he can call plays and there's a higher ceiling versus maybe with Vrabel's past track record, the ceiling may not be high, but the floor is at least a little bit higher. So at least you can win maybe 10, 11 games, which is still a good season on its own. But that is as far as you can get there with people like Mike Vrabel. Those are the arguments that are being thrown out there from people like Robert Schmitz, etc. Where do you stand on the ceiling versus the floor argument?
Yeah, I feel like, I would not at all be skeptical that Mike Vrabel can bring with him a qualified offensive coordinator. His experience in the league, his networks in the league, and so forth. He's gonna come into that job interview with the Chicago Bears, and he's gonna say, "I've talked to this person. and they're interested in coming with me to be the offensive coordinator. I've talked to this person to be the special teams and defensive coordinator. So he's coming in with a list of people, and then now you're going to compare that with somebody like Ben Johnson. He's going to say, "I'm bringing in my right hand person to be my offensive coordinator, but I'll be calling plays and designing most of the plays." And this is who I'm going to bring in for the other two coordinator positions. And then so you got to weigh all of those things when you're evaluating the candidates, because it really isn't. It's like electing a president. People sometimes put too much focus on who we're going to elect in president. I want to know who's going to be the defense secretary. I don't want some guy who is totally unqualified to be a defense secretary, if you know what I mean.
Right.
but it's a lot to compare, but right now I'm kind of leaning a little bit more to that veteran who can correct this locker room, or you're going to have to really go through a rebuild and start moving some of the bad apples. Is Jalen Johnson a bad apple? You have to ask that question after he throws this tantrum for an hour, and then he follows that up by having poor games, or certainly not Pro Bowl level games. Right. And so that's concerning. And hopefully Ryan Poles and the Bears administration is looking into these things and gathering intel from, assistant coaches, people who are in the locker room to get an understanding as, can we trust some of these players? Because if not, that really, really puts more emphasis on bringing in an experienced guy. John Fox, as much as I disliked him, the one thing that he did is that he corrected the locker room, something that Tressman left as a mess. It was a mess. People fired Brandon Marshall fighting with everything. John Fox came in and took care of that. So we might have to go there and then hopefully rely on that new offensive coordinator is going to be hired to establish a rapport with Caleb, and then Caleb, wearing the cape more often during a game than not.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. A decade ago, we went through this mess with, Mark Tressman, who arguably one of the, or at least probably the worst head coach in Bears history. And now, 10 years later, we're repeating the same thing with Matt Eberflus. Obviously, argument can be made about Tressman versus Eberflus, who's the worst head coach of all time with the Bears. And now we're probably looking at hiring, another experienced defensive coach. Obviously, Mike Vrabel is a little more younger, and probably a little more, I like to think he's more open-minded and maybe a little more flexible, coming in to clean up this mess as well. One thing I'm a little concerned with Vrabel is how his tenure ended with Tennessee, because he had an argument with a female owner, and had an argument with the general manager, and wanted to, kind of like be the duo guy there. So I think maybe he hasn't given up on that yet, based on how it ended. I'm really, really worried about coaches who want to do both the GM and the head coaching job. John Gruden was that guy. He won a Super Bowl, but his overall record is really, less than uninspiring, of course. We went through that with the Bears. Dave Wanstead, after he got hired, Bill Tobin ran out of the front office, and from there, just it all nosedived, and the Bears really never hired another general manager for some reason until Jerry Angelo got hired in 2001 there. So the damage, the irreparable damage that the head coach who wants more power than he should have, can be, cannot be overlooked there. So I'm very curious to see, what Mike Vrabel wants to do there, in terms of, does he want to coach, or does he want to be like a GM? That's an interesting argument. And of course, Ohio State job could also open up depending on how bad the OSU crashes out of the college football playoffs there. So those are the things I think, we have to kind of keep an eye on there. Other than Vrabel and Johnson, who's your head coaching candidate that you're very interested in?
I let's see. I definitely want to talk to Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, the defense, the Lions don't have a great defense, but they've had so many injuries to their
Yeah.
defense, and he's kept them together, fighting hard, playing hard. He's definitely a raw guy, the type of guy who could um, galvanize a team by getting them to stick together and putting a chip on their shoulder saying they're all against us, let's prove. That type of a coach Aaron Glenn could potentially be and be very good at. um, is he great with the X's and O's? I love coaches who are smart. I was a big fan of Bill Walsh, even though Dick used to call him a genius, and I thought that he was. He
Right. Right.
revolutionized offenses and helped to create the West Coast offense. So I like guys like that. So Aaron, if he comes in for an interview, he's going to have to wow me with some of schematics of how he's done blitzes and handled scrambling quarterbacks, blah blah blah. So he's one. Liam Cohn is another guy who is with Tampa Bay and looks like he could be the next Ben Johnson. He might be a year or two early, but I'd love to bring him in and talk to him, and maybe even learn something from him. Or if he wows you, if he does seem like this guy is magic, and there's proof in the pudding with what he has demonstrated on film, then bring him in. Uh, so right now, I don't have favorites. I'm thinking more of the line of to who should be candidates, who should they interview, and I think they should cast a very wide net. There are reports now that the search has already started,
Yep.
and I think that's that's good
Mhm.
news. Anyone that is unemployed and has the credentials to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears, Ryan Poles should be talking to that person right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the benefit of getting a head start. You can actually start looking into other candidates, and then kind of start vetting the process. And I think where Warren, you know, I know you probably won't like when I say this, at least from Warren's past experience, working as an executive and also having a law degree, you can actually vet the process. You can do a little bit of a deeper, more meaningful, um, background check. I think what Paul's, and I think you'll probably agree with me on this, is that he gets attached too emotional. We saw him cry with the cutting of Adrian Colbert, and then also um, keeping Velus Jones longer than he should have. And then, of course, Matt Eberflus, vouching for him and then just completely looking like a total fool for, sticking up for him. So I think, with the support of Warren and during the vetting process, where you can get a good idea of the coach's background. We look at the resume. Is he fudging something? Is he forging something? Or does he have like past problems where he's got DUI? He's got a domestic violence that we don't know about, that he's hiding, or that that's going to be that could come up, with somebody from TMZ, snoop around and leak those informations to make him look bad and stuff like that. And then if you didn't do the due process properly, those things are going to make you look bad as an organization. So hopefully Warren is there to lend the support in that area, because I think the whole process of hiring Eberflus, hiring Getsy, and then also hiring Shane Waldron was uh, just a total disaster in many, many sense. And you're going to have to kind of evaluate, okay, why did you hire Waldron? Is it just because you're doing a favor for Trace Armstrong? Or is it because, you forgot to, or you ignored certain areas of, the process here during there? So I just hope that this time around, Paul's and Warren can do a much better process of vetting and hiring the right people. So I hope that those two, no matter what their relationship right now, they can at least try to be like a roadblock for George McCaskey from sticking his head and try to meddle like people think that they do, and make sure that the hiring process is between those two men, and Poles is making that the final choice based on the information that they have made sure that they have vetted. So for me, Ben Johnson or Brable, or even Liam Cohen. Ironically, the Bears did interview him as one of the OCs, and of all the OCs that the Bears interviewed, we somehow always draw the short end of the stick there. So hopefully, Liam Cohen, even with the lack of experience part, still would be brought in, and then just kind of pick their heads. I think
Yeah.
that's the whole idea. Get more information as much as possible.
Absolutely. And let me add to that is, you can't, of course, blame Kevin Warren for anything having to do with the Eberflus hire and Luke Getzey and that staff,
Right. That
because
was
he
all
wasn't.
Waldron.
That
Excuse
was
me. That was all Ryan Poles.
that was all Ryan Post, and then, but he was there with the team during the hiring of Shane Waldron. So one of the questions I would love for the media to ask the next time they have an opportunity to talk to Warren and or Poles is, hey, Mr. Warren, how involved were you with the selection of Shane Waldron? Did you get a chance to talk to him? Did you get a chance to ask him the type of questions and whether he can, demonstrate how working with a young quarterback, because he had success with a veteran quarterback, but now we're talking a whole new dynamic, a young quarterback. Since Chris Morgan has been retained, how can you work with that run philosophy that Mr. Morgan has? Because those are questions that hopefully Ryan Poles asked, but Mr. Warren, if he's going to be involved in this process, should have asked those too, and to get confirmation from the candidate. So that's one thing. The other thing I'd like to say is, the whole George McCaskey thing is really strange. There is no doubt that he's been a failure as the chairman. If you're looking at wins and losses, he is definitely a failure. If you're looking at money made, then he's been a success, a huge success. The franchise is valued at $5 billion, and that's why there is no rush at all by the brothers and the board of directors to get rid of him, because they may be getting tired of being laughed at by the national media and so forth, but they're also laughing all the way to the bank. So the thing with George that I think is going to be a mystery until some enterprising reporter writes the book that will define everything that George meddled in or did not meddle in, is that book has still not been written. I'm interested in finding out, is George McCaskey the guy who told Matt Nagy, what are you asking me about whether we should start Justin Fields or Andy Dalton? You're the coach. Is he that guy, or is he the guy who said to Ryan Poles, here are the three candidates that we like, as opposed to saying, here are three candidates that we interviewed and like. You can expand the search. You can do whatever you want. That was never said at the introductory press conference that I recently saw again for a video I made. So those are two different leaders there, so is he a meddling guy, but does it in a kind of sneaky, conniving, not very surface level, but under the surface approach? Or is he really, I don't know anything, I'm just a fan, which is ridiculous, by the way.
Right.
But
neither is a good look for him either.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. So and maybe nothing will change until the team, has new leadership from the very, very top. Maybe it's another McCaskey who is named the chairman, and he starts to change the overall decision making, or maybe it's a sale to an outside agent who is going to come in and totally deliver a new culture. Look at what's happened in Washington. Snyder is out, and all of a sudden the Commanders are looking like a real NFL franchise. So those are all questions that all of us fans have, and we want solutions as quickly as possible. Because I just got a note from one of the co-hosts from the Barfly Tailgate show, and he said, the Bears have broken me. I can't do another show. I just feel like I'm going to go on there and rant and rave and so forth. And that's not the first time that I've heard from people who are, jumping ship on the Bears. They may still follow them, but the passion,
Mhm.
paying for all that crap on the wall there, that's starting to dissipate, and it's starting to dissipate fast. So they got to take action. They better do it quickly, and they
Right.
better do it right.
Yeah, well, when you have Caleb Williams, as talented as he is, his free agency is going to fast approach in 3-4 years.
Hmm.
You better have a damn good team. You know,
Hmm.
the one with a great offensive line, defense that can rush the quarterback. No more, soft zone coverage that we were used to seeing under Matt Eberflus. So, the philosophy and the organizational goals, they all have to align now.
Hmm.
And I hope that Warren can do that job along with what he's being asked to do. So that's to get the stadium, which hopefully we will get to the that finish line very, very soon. And it's looking like Arlington Heights, it's doing all they can, your neck of the woods, Aldo, that they're doing all they can to lure that stadium.
Hmm.
They will have the entire stadium, concessions and everything to themselves, which I think is a very attractive, rather than continuing to be stubborn and try to find places in the Chicago area to build when there's no funding available for from the city and the government, the state of Illinois themselves right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully Warren doesn't forget that job, and it's he's not sticking his head just trying to your so-called meddling by many fans as a way of deviating from what he was asked to do as well. Now, looking at, oh,
Real
go ahead.
quick
I apologize.
thought. No, no. Quick thought on the stadium is, the numbers and the metrics all say that if you own a team in a very passionate fan base market, you should own the stadium, and you should also own nearby property, because
Exactly.
it's a gold mine. And so,
Mhm.
why Pose is seeking some type of partnership with the city of Chicago might be, and I'm speculating here, might be because the Bears might be having a cash flow problem. Not that they aren't rich, but
Yeah.
cash flow, available cash. And so that's why perhaps they've pumped the brakes on Arlington Heights, because they're going to have to turn out more cash. That's one thing. And then the other thing I had a question for you when it gets to the head coach candidates.
Sure.
Brian Flores' name has kind of picked up a little steam among pundits, because, he kind of is the embodiment of Chicago Bears defense. Pressure the quarterback, exotic
Right.
blitzes.
Blitzes. Yes.
He's hard as nails. But we all know the story of how he treated Tua Tagovailoa in Miami. He denigrated him. He really treated him like a second class citizen and so forth. What's your opinion about Brian Flores? Do you think you bring him in for an interview, or do you think that the past actions that he had with a young quarterback, a la Caleb Williams, could be a no-go?
Great question. I would interview him. There's no question. I think Warren's past ties with Minnesota certainly makes him an attractive candidate, at least for an interview purposes. Neither Flores and Warren have ever come across each other or been with the same organization in any shape or form. What you mentioned with the Tua's relationship is well documented, and not to mention his lawsuit against the league for the discriminatory hiring process. That still haven't been resolved yet.
That's correct.
So you know whoever tries to hire him, you have to answer those two questions. What about the discriminatory hiring process? Are you going to drop that as a part of an agreement to take the new job? Or are you still going to stick up for it because you feel that is the right thing to do for your fellow minority coaches? And then number two, of course, is that what do you learn from that experience, with Tua? And how is it any different than, Caleb Williams, Drake May, or even Cam Ward or Shadir Sanders,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have to, deal with the young quarterbacks. Are you just, there to just break their, break their bone or
Confidence.
spirit,
Yeah.
because you're a hard ass defensive coordinator, who wanted to, kind of, prep as a way of accelerating the growth of the quarterback going up against your defense in practices and training camps, or you learn something from that experience, being called out from Tua and as well as the other people, and did that kind of learn maybe about interacting with the players, communication skills, etc. You can have a greatest scheme in the world, but you're nothing without players buying in. And we've already had that problem with Matt Eberflus, completely, disagreeing himself from the Hail Mary and then the lack of accountability. We don't want that, same thing happening again. I'm sure he will get on an interview. He would probably be at the bottom of my the top candidate, to be honest. Maybe along with Cliff Kingsbury as well. So I would at least give him an interview, and then see, what do you see in Chicago Bears having faced us, 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row as a DC, and how do you fix the leadership and accountability, and how do you make sure that you and Caleb are on the same page versus what you went through with Tua? I think it's a worth asking, and then maybe if the answer is suffice, maybe he might put himself in a pretty good candidacy there too. So
Yeah, I agree. You got to go through the process of interviewing. At the very least, you can potentially pick up some intel about
exactly.
his thoughts on the Bears schematics. Absolutely.
Exactly. You can ignore well, I think you could turn down a candidate, maybe not as a serious candidate, but I think, you should be able to kind of, like you said, cast an open, uh, cast and interview as many candidates as possible. That's why you're in a position right now. You had to fire Matt Eberflus, and you're already getting a head start, and you're getting an intel right now on some of the coaches. You get to face the Vikings and their defense again this upcoming Monday. So,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to learn a lot about these coaches and their personalities, their strengths and weaknesses, as the season goes on. And finally, I want to kind of end on this note, Aldo. With regarding Thomas Brown, um, it's unfortunate that his first game turned into like such a disaster, and now it pretty much, unfortunately, all but ended his candidacy. With the Chicago Bears, at least from the Bears coaching job, the next 4 games he still has the opportunity to redeem himself, per se. What do you want to see from him, and what do you want to see from offense and defense under his leadership the rest of the season?
Yeah. I fell in love immediately with Thomas Brown when I heard him at the podium, and he spoke like the way I want my football coach to
Yeah, he
speak.
was very impressive in that area. That
Very,
might
very
be
impressive.
something that you kind of get suckered into.
Exactly like I did. Because the team comes out and has its worst performance. Now, I do think that we shouldn't evaluate him too much on this game against San Francisco, because there were a lot of things working about him. He only had 5 days to prepare for the game, or 6 or so, after being named head coach. Now, he did choose to visit his family in Florida over Thanksgiving weekend, and perhaps maybe he should have worked a little bit more at Alice Law. But be that as it may, and he had different positions. He was a passing coordinator in November, and an offensive coordinator in late November, and then a head coach in early December. So a lot has happened.
Right.
So you can kind of excuse him. These remaining games, there are 3 NFC North opponents still on the schedule, and there is a Thursday night game against a playoff contending team. So Seattle Seahawks. So
Yeah.
those are tough teams. He hopefully will show to us that he can win 2 or 3 games of those 4 games. And my gosh, I'm going to be hoping and praying that he wins all 4. The heck with draft position, because I would hate to see Caleb Williams go through another offensive coordinator, head coach, and so forth.
Mhm.
My feeling first is, somebody on I think it was one of the morning radio shows, the guy who was with Bernstein, the new guy, he said he came up with a new acronym called COE. Is it COE? Yeah. Caleb. It's about Caleb. Everything is about Caleb now. So every
Mhm.
decision you make has to be for the benefit of Caleb, to help him uh, be a transformational quarterback. And
Yeah.
so, if he can continue to progress Caleb's game, and we are competing in these final games, then I say, why shouldn't he get serious consideration? But those are big ifs, particularly given the performance in San Francisco. They came out flat again in the first half, like they have all season long. And this time they didn't even compete in the second half, although they showed the glimmer that they might. So I'm pulling for him, but
Mhm.
I'm not feeling too confident this is going to happen for him.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting the job, and that's okay. What happened in San Francisco, you cannot fault him for everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
It just rapid ascension. I'm not saying that he's unqualified for. I think with what happened in San Francisco, I'm sure he took it to heart. He probably saw a lot of guys loafing or just probably gave up, and hopefully he can at least get these guys to play much better. Of course, you can't have it at a better stage than Monday Night Football against a team that you came close to beating
Mm-hmm.
in November. If it wasn't for the overtime game,
Right.
so at least you have a fighting chance. And I want to see a better effort from the Bears this time around. And if we see anything remotely close to the San Francisco game on Monday night, then I think we have a real problem here,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But hopefully, what I like to see is that Caleb continue to develop his relationship with Rome Odunze more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on that. I think Austin Booker should probably get more snaps, even though he might get over or get mauled by a bigger, experienced tackle or guard. But hey, I mean, he's a rookie and he kind of held it on his own, pretty much so far. Let's see what he can do the next 4 games. Is he a starter, or is he like a more of a pass rush specialist
Right.
moving forward? You still need another edge rusher, next to Montez Sweat. Is Booker the one, or do you need to draft another one?
Mm-hmm.
And the offensive line, we know how bad it's been. Kieran Amagaji, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? It's time to find out. At least he got some action in the San Francisco game. Can he hack it as a guard? We'll see. I know he's from Yale. Obviously, the competition is massively different
Right.
versus Big Ten or SEC. And now he's being thrown into the water. Now let's see if he can sink or swim. So there are some interesting storylines that still needs to be addressed for the next 4 games. And hopefully the Bears can win at least a game or two to make us feel good about the Bears entering this off season, because it would be so devastating that the Bears lose the last 11 games again. It takes a mental toll on every player. Caleb was really feeling a little bit down and feeling kind of responsible for what's happening. It's not all his fault at all. Unfortunately, with all the coaching changes that they had to go through, players Johnson, Komet, they got to step up. They can talk all they want. Hey, the next 4 games, this is your auditioning tape for the new coach as well. They're going to see it through. Are you a fighter, or are you just basically just a guy who talks but cannot back it up? And right now, unfortunately, based on what we saw on the 49ers game, that's more of a ladder right now. So,
Mm-hmm.
they have to show some fighting spirits, and they have to show some pride the next 4 games, and to enter the off season. I know none of these guys don't give a shit about the draft picks, or because they're going to be drafting somebody that could replace you, first, second, or third round because of what happened this year. So they're really going to have to start, showing something. If you really, really like Thomas Brown, then play like one.
Right.
That's what I want to see for the next 4 games, starting, Monday night against, the tough Minnesota Vikings team. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the coaches that are not currently on the radar. Kevin Stefanski is somewhat considered safe right now. If he somehow becomes available, whether the Cleveland ownership decides to fire him, or if he's available for, like, say, trade for a 3rd-round pick or 2nd-round pick, would you pull the trigger, or you're not a Stefanski fan?
I'm not a big enough Stefanski fan to trade any draft capital for. And, I'm particularly sensitive to the fact that if the other person has not had success with the previous organization, why would you want to hire him, especially right away? To me, it seems like any coach who's coming off a job and they've had a losing season or two, they should probably take some time off as opposed to jumping into a new job and reflect on what they did wrong and then come back better than ever. I know Mike McCarthy did that with Dallas, and we can argue whether Mike is a good coach or not, but he did use that time between those jobs with the Packers and the Cowboys in a really smart way. He gathered some other coaches and they strategized. They talked about things both on and off the football field, but all related to the game of football. And I think it made him more prepared to resume his head coaching career. And again, he hasn't had any success in terms of playoff wins or Super Bowls. One playoff win, I think, recently, but that's about it. But that to me is the proper approach to dealing with a coach who is coming off a losing season. So for now, I would say Kevin Stefanski, no thanks.
All right. Well, Aldo, thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's getting a little bit late there as well. I know we went over a little bit over an hour, and thank you for people who were kind enough to join us tonight. I know we had the Rashab's timeline X there, which got disconnected and had to reconnect and everything as well. So follow Aldo on his YouTube channel, the Barroom Network. He's got a host of channels dedicated to the Bears and other Chicago sports as well. Aldo, I want to thank you once again, and hopefully maybe in a month or two when we have a better idea where the Bears are, with the coaches and the draft selections, maybe we can do a little more deep dive into what can we expect and what we want to see the Bears do this upcoming offseason in terms of free agency and the draft. So thank you once again, and wishing you and your family happy holidays.
Same to you and your loved ones, and I'd be happy to come on anytime. Love talking sports with you, brother.
Oh, by the way, I appreciate the fans, probably coming from your channel to ask questions and leave comments tonight. We hopefully will bring Aldo again, and those who are from the Barroom Network can join us again and get a more engaged conversations on the Bears off season. Thank you, Aldo. And thank you very much for everybody. And by the way, tomorrow I'm having Harrison Graham from the Chat Sports at 7:30, 6:30 Central to join us and get more on this Bears current state of the Bears. And we look forward to having you on this channel. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Thank you, Aldo. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.